This is Monkey World in Dorset, the largest ape and monkey rescue centre on the planet. Today on Monkey Life, there's been a scuffle amongst the female capuchins and Tien has been injured.
She's got a severe wound on her back. It's one of the worst we've had so far in the capuchins.
Orangutan Amy is heavily pregnant and very grumpy. And Alison has her last visit with Paulo, the baby woolly monkey she hand-reared.
I think this is it. I think it's time for Paulo to graduate. He's now a fully functioning member of the woolly monkey group and our task here is done.
It's early morning at Monkey World, and down at the female capuchin house, primate care supervisor Hannah has discovered a problem.
We were just doing our morning checks as usual, and we noticed an individual not moving on top of one of the tube nest boxes, so obviously very concerned. We could see an injury on her back. Didn't respond to us calling, so got very nervous very quickly, but luckily she did start wandering around and I could ID her as Tien, and she's got a very nasty cut on her back. The culprit is unknown. It's obviously happened through the night.
Tien has been rushed to the medical room, and after her fur is removed, park vet Femke can see the injury looks serious.
It's quite a nasty cut. It's one of the worst we've had so far in the capuchins.
It's likely that Tien was bitten in an attack. The 88 Chilean capuchins are still trying to establish their hierarchy, so have scuffles all the time. But Tien's injury is severe. The wound is dangerously close to nerves and muscles that control movement.
There's some muscle and nerve damage, so I'm now removing the dead tissue. I'm going to see what I can repair.
Dead tissue means the wound is infected, so Femke needs to thoroughly clean the area.
I'm now looking if I can pull the muscle together again, or if there's too much damage.
If the nerve and muscle damage can't be repaired, Tien could be left with a permanent disability.
I'm now stitching the muscle together. There was quite a big gap, so I was worried it wasn't possible. But it seems to be going better than I thought, so that's good news.
Tien has needed 14 stitches. The wound is deep, and superglue is used to ensure the stitches don't come loose. With the injury repaired, Tien must leave it alone to let it heal properly. If she or another capuchin picks the wound, it may reopen, which could lead to another infection. And later, Tien is given an unusual but stylish bandage to prevent her from picking at the wound.
Well, she looks quite cute and happy with her jacket. I mean, she's a little bit annoyed by it every now and then. She's looking like, what is this?
And young chimp Rodders bites off more than he can chew when a big new branch appears in the nursery. It's breakfast time for the park's residents. And like most animals, primates love to eat, so everyone's tucking in. And over with the orangutans, it's the time of day greedy Amy loves. But today something's up. She's not eating. The park has put fruit and honey high up on the platforms and poles, so the orangs can climb and work for their breakfast. In the wild, most of the orangs' food grows high in the treetops, and it's where they spend most of their time. But as Amy is heavily pregnant, she's finding it increasingly difficult to maneuver about the enclosure. and she simply cannot face the high climb to get the goodies. Which is good news for the other orangs in the group. They can take full advantage of Amy's lack of interest and are busy licking the enclosure clean, making sure they don't miss a mouthful. Captive orangutans tend to be lazy, so it's good to see them moving around and getting a bit of exercise. The staff will make sure Amy gets the food she needs and keep a careful eye on her progress. This really isn't like her, and it could be an indication that she's going into labour. At the chimp nursery, there's a hive of activity. Little do foster mum Sally and her group know that they're about to get a new addition to their enclosure. Where possible, the park likes to give the primates natural enrichment, and this felled tree branch should do the trick.
We were worried about a tree that actually is on the outside of the enclosure, but some very big branches were leaning over the overhang. So as a safety precaution, we've removed those. Now we're going to put them inside for something for them to play with. So we're killing two birds with one stone, really, and making sure the enclosure's safe, but also creating some new apparatus for the little ones to play with.
So get that V over. So come further back this way, would you? And then feed it back.
Everybody is sure that this large branch will keep the chimps amused and also encourage natural movement.
Especially with the younger chimps in this group, they're still learning how they move around and what works and what doesn't and how adventurous they can be. So it's nice to have something different that moves and gives and that they really have to test their strength and their agility with.
The nursery is mostly made up of youngsters, but at around 3 years old, they already have the strength of the average human man. And they are destructive. So the team work hard to make this tree chimp-proof, convinced they will really enjoy this new play area. A chimp's primary sense is sight, and when the group come outside, they can immediately see that something different and very large is in their enclosure. So most of them decide to proceed with caution. But dominant female Sally is feeling brave and leads the way for the youngsters. She inspects it. She snaps some twigs off it. She works out that it doesn't taste very nice and it's not harbouring any hidden treats, and then runs out of things to do with it. So she gets bored. It's clearly not anywhere near exciting enough for her. And young Rodders should have taken tips from his foster mum and avoided eating the branch, as trying to break the branches with your teeth is clearly quite painful. Lulu is with Sally on this one. She knows the branch isn't hiding any treats either, so they're both on the lookout for something else to do. For a while, it looks like all the hard work of the primate care staff has been in vain. But then, who shows up but cheeky youngster Brian? He loves to play and is convinced that the others are missing a trick. He can't wait to get to grips with this new climbing frame. There's a problem. The branch is a bit unstable, so he needs to employ some impressive balancing skills to get to the top. But once he's found his feet, there's no stopping him. Brian puts the tree to the test, and it makes an excellent chew toy and climbing frame. Back at the capuchin house, Tien is recovering from the emergency operation to stitch up her nasty bite wound. Vet Femke had to work quickly to prevent permanent nerve and tissue damage. Luckily, the signs are good. She's looking well and seems to have retained full movement. But as the wound is deep, Femke wants to take every precaution to ensure Tien doesn't pick at the injury and reopen the wound. so she's been given an extra dressing.
Well, she looks quite cute and happy with her jacket. I mean, she's a little bit annoyed by it every now and then. She's looking like, what is this? But yeah, it's not too bad. She'll survive.
Tien is going to be kept in a separate enclosure from the rest of her group to give her injury a chance to heal.
When Tia's wound is healing all right, then she'll go back in with the others. But as long as it is like it is now, very open, very infected, no, she won't be able to go in with the others yet, because there's always a risk of them over-grooming her and picking at her wound, and it will definitely get infected again then, and that's not what we want.
As well as having a new safety bandage to wear, Tien is also on a variety of medication.
Tia is on antibiotics right now for the infection and also on some pain relief. And we've also put her on some medication to keep her a little bit drowsy so she won't mess with her bandage and wound too much. So hopefully she'll just relax and the wound will heal.
Tien will keep this bandage on for 10 to 14 days, and the wound should fully heal in around 4 weeks' time. It's a new day at Monkey World in Dorset, and staff have woken to news about pregnant orangutan Amy. Primate care staff had kept a careful eye on Amy since she stopped eating the day before. And in the middle of the night, she went into labour and gave birth. Her movements were captured on CCTV, which was used to monitor her during the pregnancy. But sadly, things didn't go according to plan.
This morning, Jeremy came in and found Amy in bed alongside of her infant, but it was dead. Really tough time for all of us, and I start to get quite choked up even thinking about it. You know, it's an individual that we never got to know. We were doing late-night checks before everybody went home in the evening, and very early morning checks, knowing that most of the births of monkeys and apes occur in the middle of the night. And we knew that she was due any time, and she was becoming enormous, so it seemed like, you know, the baby really was due and potentially overdue. You know, we were hopeful that we would get a healthy baby out of it, but it wasn't to be this time.
The CCTV footage shows that Amy had a quick labour, but straight after the birth she turned her back to the camera, and no one really knows what happened next.
Really, it's hard to tell exactly what state the infant was in when it was born. Was it perfectly fit and healthy? Probably we'll never know.
Because of Amy's lack of maternal skills, the park did all they could to prepare her for motherhood.
Amy hasn't been a good mother in the past. We had to hand rear Gordon. There was one infant before that didn't survive. We had hoped that at least we would be able to get the infant out healthy and alive. And if we had to hand rear it, so be it. We didn't need Amy to care for the baby, but we needed the baby fit and healthy. And sadly, we weren't able to come up with that on this occasion.
Orangutans can suffer from postnatal depression, but Amy has been through this before and is recovering from the trauma of giving birth.
I suspect Amy's a pretty sort of tough lady, that she's not going to actually need a whole lot of care and support, but we'll give her some extra antibiotic cover just to make sure there's no infection left behind, because birthing is quite a traumatic event. We'll have to get all of that in our heads, get her ready and fit to join the others again, and then consider the future. We just have to look at it and learn as much as we can from what has been a rather sad event.
Later, Alison makes her last visit with a baby who is flourishing, woolly monkey Paulo.
He feels his place is here with the woolly monkeys, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve.
At the bachelor boy enclosure, Seamus is feeling relaxed and confident with his group. He's now living with all 14 boys, and life is good.
We were always very hopeful that Seamus would come down and get on really well with this group. His nature, his playfulness, his boisterousness, his cheeky side really does lend itself to this group and the guys in here. Also, I think Seamus has actually matured a lot in the last couple of years. At the start of the introductions, he was fairly nervous with the individuals, but towards the end, he'd actually just start to hold his ground, not react to them. If he starts to scream and run off, they think it's brilliant, it's someone to chase. But because he held his ground, they actually came over to him, made the first move, initiated contact, and from then on, really, everything was quite smooth.
Before moving to the Bachelors, Seamus lived in the nursery and was spoilt rotten. This means he would often get more than his fair share of the food and was piling on the pounds. But since moving in with the Bachelors, Seamus has slimmed down.
Seamus has actually lost a lot of his belly since being in the nursery. Obviously up there he could actually dominate all the food and take pretty much what he wanted. Down here he has to compete with the other guys, and Lowe's doing very well at that. He has thinned down a little bit. He's looking pretty much spot on now where we'd hope him to be. So we actually just give him the odd extra just to make sure he actually maintains his weight now. But no, he's looking a much better chimp these days.
Seamus may have lost the weight, but luckily he hasn't lost too much of his cheeky and lovable character.
Still very playful. You see if there's any kind of trouble, he'll actually be involved right in the middle of it. In general, it's been a positive move for everyone. It's actually really sort of buoyed up the group. Having a younger chimp in there has made it them all much more playful. And he has to learn how to actually behave in a group situation where he's not the centre of attention, he's not king of the hill anymore. He's done really well at it, he's picked it up. He can read the signs of chimp body language now, so we're really, really are pleased with his progress.
Many of the park's apes and monkeys live in natural family groups, so the primate care staff keep physical contact with them to a minimum and don't go into their enclosures. But some of the primates were hand-reared. This afternoon, Alison is in the woolly monkey garden and she's come to say goodbye to baby Paulo, who she's looked after since birth. And even though his new enclosure is rather large for this little chap to tackle, the lure of mango and seeing his old foster mum is just too tempting.
Paulo's now about 8 months old and has been living with the woolly monkeys now here in Bueno's group for 2 months. So that's it. Apron strings are cut now. You know, Mike and I keep coming over to visit him, and he's very happy saying hi to us through the mesh. But what's very clear is that he feels his place is here with the woolly monkeys, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. I mean, everybody always says, won't you be sad when he becomes independent? I'm like the beaming, proud mother here. It's great. Not only is he sort of reluctant to leave like the security of the house and all of the others who are over there, you know, he wants to see me. Clearly, he's very happy to see me, but I think he's more happy to see the mango. Aren't you? He's a proper, confident little man who knows what he wants, and that's to be with others of his own kinds.
Paulo is the second woolly monkey to be hand-reared at the park. In fact, he's one of only a few successfully hand-reared woolly monkey babies in the world.
We're pleased as Punch. It steads well for the breeding program. It means we can continue to breed monkeys here and know that we can meet their needs, whether they be mother-reared or hand-reared. And that's quite important because right now the captive woolly monkey population worldwide is non-existent.
These captive breeding programs are important for the survival of the species too, because populations in the wild are also dangerously low. Paulo is really flourishing, but he's still a baby, so the park will need to keep a close eye on him.
He's still very young. There are still things that could go wrong. He could get a cold or a flu. Being just a kilo in weight, really, that could be a difficult situation for him. So we're not going to be too cocky yet, but I think this is it. I think it's time for Paulo to graduate and for us to all say congratulations that he's now a fully functioning member of the woolly monkey group, and our task here is done.
Back at the bachelor pad, Seamus is proving that he's also a fully fledged member of his group. And he's quickly learnt to stay right out of the way when there's trouble. There are plenty of outbursts and dominance displays in the bachelor group. But when peace is restored, Seamus really comes into his own. And that means playtime. The bachelors are really just a bunch of overgrown boys. They love to mess about, and Seamus is the perfect playmate. The 9-year-old is much smaller than the rest of the group, and they all love him because he isn't a threat. In fact, the group can't get enough of Seamus. He's made some really good friends, and now he gets to have rough and tumble anytime he likes. And with chimps that are just as silly as him. Seamus is definitely now one of the boys. Next time, Jeremy is worried about young Chimp Ben.
He had a wound on his foot, which wasn't too horrendous at all, but it's actually become infected. We've got this very badly swollen skin loss and inflammation.
In Paddy's chimp group, baby Bart is always on the go, and he's testing his mum's patience. And pregnant woolly monkey Paquita is huge. The team are getting concerned.
Paquita's still not had her baby. She's keeping us all on tenterhooks. At the moment, her baby bump is enormous. We don't really think she can get much bigger than she is. Okay.
This is Monkey World in Dorset, the largest ape and monkey rescue centre on the planet. Today on Monkey Life, Chimp Ben has a nasty foot injury and Jeremy is worried.
Obviously, it's going to hurt, but we do have him on a lot of pain relief, so I'm sure it'll still be uncomfortable, but it won't be too horrendous.
In Paddy's chimp troop, it may be his dad who's the boss, but Bart is beginning to realise he's pretty important too. And Keeper Holly checks on Xuzy, the oldest captive woolly monkey in the world.
Because she's old, she's got a few funny little ways. She won't do anything unless you make a really big deal of it. Oh, good girl! There we go.
Monkey World is home to 248 primates. Each and every one of them needs to be cared for when they get ill or injured. Inside Hananya's chimp house, animal director Jeremy is checking up on Ben, who has an extremely nasty foot infection.
He had a wound on his foot, which wasn't too horrendous at all, quite a normal chimpy sort of wound on the foot. But it's actually become infected. We've got this very badly swollen skin loss and inflammation.
The wound started as a tiny cut that he got during one of his meetings with alpha male Hananya. But unfortunately, his foot rapidly became swollen and infected. And on top of that, Ben won't leave it alone.
Don't do that.
It's a major setback for Ben's introduction to Hananya's group, just when the meetings were starting to show some promise. However, Ben's health is now the priority. Jeremy needs to ensure the blood is still circulating to Ben's toes. If it isn't, he could lose them, or worse, his whole foot.
Have a look at your foot. Go on. Let me feel how warm your toes are. This one is the coldest. And that one isn't quite so cold. Poor little boy.
Even though it's a bad infection, chimpanzees are very resilient.
He's been remarkably well, because as you can see, it's a pretty horrendous thing. He's getting a bit tired now, but he's eating well, and he's, you know, just giving a bit of TLC, which is a bit of... He likes this. You know, this is obviously going to help him. Obviously, it's going to hurt, but we do have him on a lot of pain relief, so I'm sure it'll still be uncomfortable, but it won't be too horrendous. You know, the fact that he's eating, the fact that he's communicating with me and everything else is a good indication that it isn't too bad at the moment.
But an infection this severe isn't going to get better by itself. So the park's vet has prescribed antibiotics for Jeremy to administer.
You all right with that? No, it's OK. No problem.
Ben has never had an injection before, and he's a bit scared of the needle. But with such a bad infection, it's vital that Ben gets treated one way or another.
Give me your arm. Come here. My options are to hand inject him with a syringe or to dart him. Well, obviously, a hand injector is nicer than a dart. But if I can just get him comfortable with this, it might just give me the edge to... See? It's only a bit of a... No problem. There, look. There. Good boy. See? That didn't hurt. I didn't even touch you.
Jeremy knows how important this injection is, and he's not giving up yet.
Oh, huh? You got half your foot hanging off and you're worried about that? What you like? See?
This is not the first time that Jeremy's had to deal with a serious infection.
No, you're not allowed to eat it.
18 months ago, over in the Bachelor Boy enclosure, 24-year-old Jimmy had an equally nasty injury. Just like Ben's foot, it started as a minor wound, which became infected and got much worse as he picked at it.
Jim leg. Good boy.
But because of Jeremy's unique relationship with the animals at the park, he could get up close with Jimmy to ensure he had the treatment he needed, often risking his own safety.
I reckon I can go in with him.
And now Jimmy's knee has fully healed, and he seems to have put his troubles behind him. Hopefully, Jeremy can do the same for Ben and help him pull through. But later, Ben can't overcome his fear of needles, so Jeremy has another idea.
Just playing with this syringe here, it's just not going to happen. Whereas if I can lull him against the mesh and then one of the girls can trick him.
And orangutan Dinda struggles to overcome a bad case of vertigo. At the woolly monkey enclosure, keeper Holly is letting Lavar's family of 7 outside for the morning. It gives Holly the ideal opportunity to check everyone over, especially 36-year-old Xuzy.
Well, this is Xuzy, and she's our oldest woolly monkey here, and she's also the oldest woolly monkey in the whole world on record in captivity, which makes her very, very special indeed. And because she's old, she's got a few funny little ways. She likes to stay inside, she likes to stay in the warm, and she won't do anything unless you make a really big deal of it. So, you're such a good girl, Suz. Good girl. And what we're doing at the moment is we're trying to teach her to present her chest so that I can listen to it with a stethoscope, so that if she does ever suffer from any sort of physical problems or any sort of lung congestion or anything like that, then hopefully we'll be able to listen to her chest and make sure that she's healthy and all that kind of thing, won't we? Oh, good girl. There we go. Good girl, Xuzy. OK, so we'll have a go. OK, Xuzy, chest.
All of this attention is optional.
Good girl. That was...
And Xuzy can walk away at any time. But with grapes as a reward for cooperating, she decides to stick around.
She seems to get quite a lot of stimulation out of it, and she seems to enjoy the contact with the keepers and obviously the amount of grapes she can be rewarded with. So all round it's interesting for her and it's beneficial for her health. OK, Kuna. Hand?
This form of training gives Holly the chance to inspect everyone for cuts and grazes. And she also gets to check out mum-to-be, Paquita, and her unborn baby.
Hand?
Woolly monkeys' pregnancies last for around 5 months. And although it's hard to pinpoint when Paquita fell pregnant, Holly suspects that she is long overdue.
Paquita's still not had her baby. She's keeping us all on tenterhooks, but as you can see, she lets us examine her bump every day, and we can, until she has enough, and we can feel where the lumps and bumps are. We can check that the baby's moving, and if it stops moving, we've got our little sort of emergency plan to make sure that her and her babies are okay.
Pregnant woolly monkeys in captivity can suffer from stress and high blood pressure, and this can cause complications during labour, known as preeclampsia. So Paquita may require surgery to deliver the baby.
If we find that the baby hasn't changed position for 2 or 3 days, then we'll start to worry, and we'll either sedate her and give her a scan or actually perform a C-section caesarean. But at the moment, her baby bump is enormous, it's solid, and we don't really think she can get much bigger than she is.
But surgery will only be used as a last resort. Hopefully, Paquita will give birth naturally, and sometime soon. Back over at Hananya's chimp house, animal director Jeremy is still trying to get Ben to take his injection.
What about that? What you like? No, you're not allowed to eat it.
This will be the first dose of a course of antibiotics, and it's vital that Ben gets this medication to treat the bacterial infection to his foot.
You big Wendy. What you like?
But he clearly isn't keen on the idea.
Have it touched you? See? No, they're not. There.
And it looks like Jeremy's going to have to come up with another plan.
There. Just playing with this syringe here, it's just not going to happen. Whereas if I can lull him against the mesh and then one of the girls can trick him, possibly. We've got nothing to lose.
Keeper Hannah moves into position with the needle.
You turn around here. Cuddle me like that.
They've only got one chance to get it right.
What's about half of it?
Most of it went in, but as the wound is severe, Jeremy needs to ensure Ben takes the whole dose.
Actually, now would be a good time for me to... While he's still fussing with that, I could attack him from a different angle.
So he relies on his unique relationship with Ben and just goes for it.
There you go. Let's go. There you go. He's had it all now. He's got that wound on his foot and he's making this big fuss about the finest little needle in the world.
Ben's going to have to put up with a lot more injections to treat his foot. So hopefully he'll get used to the needle sooner rather than later. But right now, Ben just needs a hug from his old friend.
I want to cuddle. I want to cuddle. I want to cuddle. I want to cuddle. Poor little boy.
At Monkey World in Dorset, there's one small ape who's growing in confidence every day. And that's baby Bart.
Things are going really well. We're really pleased with how he's doing. He's developing really well. In comparison to some of the smaller monkeys, chimpanzees actually develop quite slowly. But in comparison to humans, they're much faster. So he can move around by himself. He can do chin-ups on the ceiling. He can find his own food. So he's doing brilliant. His canines are just starting to come through. So really, it's been quite a productive year for Bart. He's come a long way.
As a baby, Bart has a very privileged position within Paddy's group. And this is clearly signalled to the other chimps by the prominent white tuft on his rear.
Basically, it's there so the females can actually locate them. When they're in the forest, it means they can keep an eye on them, and it also is a sort of a signal of rank. As he grows up, that'll actually disappear, but whilst he still has it, he can actually go and take food off any members of the group. He won't really get disciplined by anyone, so he's sort of a hands-off animal, so no one will actually mess with him.
And the others in the group have worked out that it pays to be pals with the prince of the park.
So some of the lower-ranking individuals will spend time with him in his vicinity just to try and deflect the attentions of some of the more dominant individuals. Obviously, they won't do anything to them while they're holding on to Bart, so yeah, he can be quite a useful tool for the lower-ranking members of the group as well.
Not only have the lower-ranking members benefited from Bart's arrival, But it's also had an amazing effect on Mum Xuzy's popularity. In fact, the other chimps just won't seem to leave her alone. It looks like Xuzy is fast becoming the most popular chimp in the troop. Or is that second most popular? Later, orangutan Dinda has to overcome her fear of heights if she wants to get some of those treats. And just why is woolly monkey Paquita looking so tired?
Paquita looks absolutely worn out at the moment. She's had a pretty rough time and she's got bags under her eyes. She's sort of shuffling along.
Down at the gibbon house, and golden-cheeked gibbon youngster Tien is outside in the trees with Mum Peanut and Dad Pongyo, and he's growing up fast.
Tien has grown so much so quickly. He's just his father's spitting image now. He is far more independent. He's flying around in the trees. Peanut's having trouble keeping up with him and keeping him under control. He's been making some decisions for himself as well. If he wants to stay out and play a bit longer, Peanut has to chase him around to pick him up and bring him in for dinner. But he's grown fast and he's doing so well.
Golden-cheeked gibbons have one very special characteristic. As they grow in size, they also undergo a colour change. This trait is unique amongst apes. Both males and females are born blonde, which is good camouflage for the defenceless youngster as it clings to its mother's belly. But before the young males and females reach a year old, their fur starts to turn black. Tien began this transformation a while ago.
He started his colour change at about 8 months of age. We first saw the first whiskers. He sort of got a little black moustache and his chin was going dark. But those are the very first indications. So it's taken him quite a while to change colour.
But now, at 2 years old, his transformation is complete. And just like his dad, he'll remain black with those distinctive golden cheeks for the rest of his life. But the young females go one stage further.
The females go through a second colour change and end up completely blonde with just a black cap on the top of their head.
Tien's mum Peanut went through this transformation 4 years ago. Over 11 months, she went from black through a brindled colour to golden. Tien may still be dependent on his mum, but now there's no mistaking who's who. Over on the other side of the park in the orangutan creche, most of the youngsters are high up on the ropes, tucking into today's treat. Sticky jam and peanut butter has been smeared high up on the poles and ropes. An orangutan's natural home is up high in the treetops. But the youngest of this group, 2-year-old Dinda, has her feet firmly on the ground. She's always been scared of heights. The idea is that by placing treats high up in the enclosure, it'll encourage the youngsters to learn climbing skills that they would have learnt from their mothers in the wild. And while most of them are budding gymnasts, Dinda needs a little more encouragement to overcome her fear of heights. But she's not getting it from foster mum Ame. She's too busy up there helping herself to as much as she can get. It doesn't matter how hard Dinda licks, there's nothing down there. So if she's going to get a taste, she'll have to head up high. Little by little, she moves up the ropes. And before long, she's done it. She's licked her way to the top of the enclosure. It looks like peanut butter and jam may actually be the perfect cure for vertigo. In the woolly monkey house, and there is wonderful news. The big event that the park has been waiting for has finally happened. Paquita has given birth to a healthy baby boy.
Paquita looks absolutely worn out at the moment. She's had a pretty rough time and she's not been a mum before, so this all takes quite a lot of getting used to for her, and she looks very tired. She's got bags under her eyes. She's sort of shuffling along, trying to learn how to be a mum and how to support the baby, and it'll take a while for her to get her rest back, but she's doing okay.
There have now been 6 woolly babies born here at the park.
Really, they're way too big for him.
Unfortunately, not all the mothers have cared for their offspring, and some have had to be hand-reared. But so far, things are looking positive for Paquita. Although this is her first baby, and it's only a few hours old, she's giving every indication that she's going to be a good mother.
We're keeping a very close eye on her, but at the moment all of the signs are very good. She's caring for the baby, she's carrying it round. We've heard sucking noises, which may be suckling, but again, we don't want to make assumptions, but it's going to the toilet as well, which is a good sign that milk is passing through it. She seems to have really good mothering instincts. She's constantly checking he's okay, perhaps even more than she needs to. She's cleaning him, and every time she moves around, she's sort of super cautious. If she needs to hang on with her tail, she supports him with one arm, and if her tail's free, she'll tuck it between her legs and press him up to her belly. So as far as his safety goes, I think he's doing pretty well.
As with all newborns, Paquita's youngster is extremely vulnerable. But Holly knows what signs to look out for if things begin to turn for the worse.
As far as the baby's health goes, we want to make sure that it's strong, that it's holding on well. Paquita's got a very long abdominal fur that it grows specifically so that babies can cling on to their mothers. We want to make sure that it's clinging on tightly, it's not just her supporting the baby. And naturally their tail is in a spiral shape, and if that spiral starts to drop out and its tail becomes limp or its head starts to roll back, it's a good indication that it's not feeding, it's becoming weak, and we might have to step in. But at the moment, none of that's happening. The baby's clambering about. It's even been on Paquita's back, which they're not supposed to do. And it's been back again, and they're getting on very well. And at the moment, things are looking quite positive.
Holly has built up a trusting relationship with Paquita, and the new mum is happy to allow Holly to check over the baby.
Physically, he's quite small. His body size is quite small, but for some reason his hands and feet are absolutely huge, and his tail is enormous. But given the size of his mother, she's a very big woolly monkey, and his dad, Lavar, is enormous as well. Perhaps it's like with puppies, if your puppy has enormous feet, you know it's going to grow into a big dog. So we're thinking we're going to end up with quite a big woolly monkey.
At the moment, Paquita seems to be the perfect mum. But it's still early days, so Holly will be spending lots of time with Paquita in case they have to step in. Next time. It's a race against time as Ben's infection seems to be spreading to the other chimps.
If you can get them on the right antibiotics, and if they leave them alone, there's every chance they'll heal up. But there are 2 big ifs there.
The orangutans are watching their weight.
So we got about 15 kilos there.
And the lemurs and macaques meet for the very first time.
Even though those guys don't really belong together, if it's good for the remaining years for those individuals, why not give it a go?
This is Monkey World in Dorset, the largest ape and monkey rescue centre on the planet. Today on Monkey Life, it's a race against time as the team try to stop an infection spreading amongst the chimpanzees.
If you can get them on right antibiotics, and if they leave them alone, there's every chance they'll heal up. But there are two big ifs there.
The orangutans are watching their weight, and the lemurs and macaques meet for the very first time.
Even though those guys don't really belong together, if it's good for the remaining years for those individuals, why not give it a go?
Inside Hananya's chimp house, vet John Lewis is visiting 7-year-old Ben, who's suffering from a serious foot infection. A few days ago, the primate care staff noticed that a small cut on Ben's foot had developed a serious infection. He was isolated from the rest of the group and treated with antibiotics. Today, John wants to check that the infection is clearing up and that there's no more treatment necessary.
It's not the right colour, is it, my friend? Not really. Did these all start as small nicks and wounds, which you just think would heal up?
Yeah.
Perfectly naturally. I mean, to be honest, most of that tissue, although there's a huge amount of erosion of the skin, etc., most of the tissue underneath doesn't look desperately necrotic. It's pink, it's granulation tissue there, and so I mean, it's infection, of course there is.
John can see that Ben's foot is healing, but the skin is very fragile, so Ben can only be treated with medication.
If you try and operate on tissue which is sort of looks crumbly, it is crumbly, stitches will just pull through that, and it's superficially infected, you will end up with a surgical wound that's not closing properly, the stitches will break down, and it'll get infected. So leave it alone until you can get rid of all that infection. And if he loses a bit of the toe tip, he loses a bit of the toe tip. That's really, to my way of thinking, that's of no consequence whatsoever. He'll still be a chimp, he'll still run around like a loony, etc., with 5 toes, 4 toes, or 3.5. When you lost half a finger, it's not bothering you, is it?
No, not a lot.
But although it's good news for Ben, John is suddenly confronted by a much bigger problem.
It's just her last shamak out there.
The other chimps have developed similar-looking sores and have been placed in isolation as well.
Which makes you wonder what's growing in them.
Including Ben's half-sister, Pip.
She had 1 or 2 scrapes on, as chimps do, as they always do. And Ben has been attending to them and picking at them.
The skin lesions look extremely sore and inflamed, just like Ben's.
Same with her, small wounds turning into scabs. Okay.
Everyone is baffled, and they have no idea how contagious the infection might be. Skin samples have been rushed to the lab for analysis. It's a race against time to diagnose the problem and prevent any more animals from getting the infection.
If you can get them on right antibiotics, and if they leave them alone, there's every chance they'll heal up. But there are two big ifs there.
Later, the lab results are in, and the team are even more puzzled.
It is still rather confusing, though. They have identified another bacteria from Pip.
In the orangutan nursery, primate care staff Colin and Penny are checking everyone's weight. But trying to get 4 lively orang toddlers to simply step on board the scales isn't that easy.
No, they don't make life particularly easy. They tend to turn it into a bit of a game. So quite often we can be in here for up to an hour.
Winding up the keepers is much more fun than getting weighed. But there's a serious reason for getting an idea of their pounds and ounces.
It's a good way of measuring their progress, measuring how they're growing, how they're getting on. But it's quite useful to have a weight so that we can actually plot a chart of their growth progress. It's also very useful if we ever have to anaesthetise them for any medical treatment. We need an accurate weight so that we can give them the correct dose of anaesthetic. We don't want to overdose or underdose them. So it's quite useful for these two reasons.
This is not an easy job, but somebody has to do it. And Colin and Penny have a plan.
What I do is either myself or Penny will get on the scales first of all, get our own weight, and then obviously we try and hold on to the kids as best we can. Then just, you know, subtract what will be their weight from the final total. And as usual, they always come to the person that doesn't have the scales. That's the, thank you. That's the traditional method.
On the face of it, it's a perfectly sensible plan. But Linga has other ideas.
The idea with this as well is to make it into a kind of a game. If you really focus and really concentrate on, you know, I must hold you and I must get away from you, they don't really respond that well. You like to keep one hand attached to something, so it's quite tricky. You can catch them as they swing, thus. And then you've got a couple of seconds to get an idea of the weight.
Sorry, Colin. Confident as you sound, that's not going to happen. It's time for Penny to step into the arena.
Let the professionals do it.
Professionals do it, OK.
Oh, I've put on half a stone. Right. That's my hair you're holding on to there. He's about 15.
Eventually, all 4 toddlers are weighed, more or less, and they're all looking fit and healthy. And now, and only now, does Linga decide that the scales look interesting after all. If only she'd decided that an hour ago. There are 28 groups of primates living at Monkey World, and staff work hard to ensure that troops are well matched and live happily together as a unit. But sometimes things just don't work out, and monkeys have to be moved. Today, the team are hoping to resolve some gripes amongst a few of the park's older residents by creating a brand new group in a vacant enclosure.
Rather than leaving the house in the enclosure that's beautiful, laying there empty, waiting for our next rescue, we thought the geriatric stump-tailed macaques, which would be Coco, Gerald, and Roland, we thought that they would actually go in here really quite well, and they can scoot around. And well, we have 4 remaining stroppy female old-timer lemurs. They were making the boys' lives a nightmare up in Malagasy, so we thought that the stump-tails could live in the house and in the enclosure down low. The ringtails could bounce around above them as they will, and that everybody will sort of just coexist.
In the wild, lemurs live in Madagascar, an island off the southeastern coast of Africa, and macaques like stump-tails live in southern Asia. So there are normally 4,600 miles and the Indian Ocean separating the 2 species. This will be the first time that these old monkeys will have met one another, and everyone's anxious to see how they'll react.
Even though those guys don't really belong together, if it's good for the remaining years for those individuals, why not give it a go? I mean, that's what we do here. So what we're doing is looking at the welfare of the 2 groups and thinking that actually they might benefit from a little bit of stimulation from each other. For us, that's the main thing, is keeping their minds busy, keeping them occupied, and keeping them in a good environment that meets their needs.
First out of the travelling boxes are the macaques. They just get along with what they have to do and take it all in their stride.
More at market, huh?
Now it's time to let the lemurs into the house. But they seem to be a lot more anxious. They're released into a bedroom alongside the macaques, so that the 2 groups can check each other out from a safe distance. The elderly macaques don't seem in the slightest bit bothered by their new roommates. And the lemurs have calmed down. So the team decide it's time to open the linking door and let the groups interact. Roland makes his way into the other room, followed by Gerald. But the lemurs are still tentative. Coco's also a little more wary of the new neighbours and hangs back. But then she spots something. Gerald's tucking into lunch, and that's enough to change her mind. And as the macaques settle down to enjoy their meal, the lemurs rapidly realise that they're missing out. There are 248 mouths to feed at Monkey World. Making sure that all of the animals are provided with a healthy, balanced diet is no mean feat. And the primates get through 1.5 tons of fruit and veg every week. There are a grand total of 94 capuchins now living at Monkey World, and they're fed a main meal twice a day, with some nice snacks in between. Today, the bachelor group's afternoon treat is walnuts. It's the first time the group have tried them, and as everybody knows, a walnut is a very tough nut to crack. Capuchins are the most intelligent of the small monkeys, and they're extremely inquisitive. So this isn't just a snack, it's an intelligence test. The capuchins know that there's food inside these tough outer shells, they just have to work out how to get to it. In the wild, capuchins have all kinds of ways to crack shells open. They bang them open on trees, and they use rocks as hammers. And it seems that these monkeys know instinctively just how to do it. As suddenly, Bruce cracks it. And once they've seen how it's done, it's not long before the others get the idea. This is a world away from the capuchins' previous lives confined in small laboratory cages. It's amazing to see these monkeys acting in such a completely natural manner. And once you've got the knack, walnuts are a cinch. But not for everybody. Poor Felipe just cannot get the hang of it. And by the looks of things, it's going to keep him busy until the next meal. Later, grumpy macaque Roland gets into a food fight with one of his new housemates. And keeper Toby finds out if Max the marmoset is sticking to his diet.
Losing 50 grams to us might not seem a lot, but to them it's quite a big portion of their body weight.
Over in the office, Alison, Jeremy and wildlife vet John Lewis are checking the lab results from both Ben's infected foot and the mysterious lesions that are breaking out on some of the other chimps in Hananya's group.
It is still rather confusing.
They're hoping that the lab results will tell them what the sores are and how the chimps got them.
Dr. John. Right now, John's talking to the lab, and we're trying to find sort of a history and a pattern. We know sort of what bacteria Ben has had on his wounds. We've taken a sample from Pip as well, because she has a couple of little spots, but nothing as bad as Ben. But John's, I think, trying to get to the origins of why these sores started in the first place.
The results from the lab show that some of the chimps have the same infection as Ben, but there are a few other infections as well. Fortunately, it turns out that all the infections are caused by common bacteria. And this information gives the team the vital clue they need to work out what's happened. The animals at the park live in open spaces that simulate their natural environment. And just like in the wild, they're exposed to a variety of bugs and bacteria every day.
Wildlife comes in and out, and there's all sorts of contaminants, if you will, that are present just in every day in the world. But it's not a problem for us if we're generally healthy.
The team know that Ben is stressed out. He's been dealing with joining a new group after all, and this has clearly made him more susceptible to an infection on his cut. The fact that it's on his foot hasn't helped to keep it clean. The chimps here lead such sociable lives, it was only a matter of time before the others in his group picked it up.
They're all going outside and encountering bird feces and everything else, as well as grooming each other and sticking their fingers and lips and mouths into each other's wounds and picking them and that kind of thing. They're all sharing whatever bacteria that they have.
The lab results show that Ben's initial infection spread through the group, causing those lesions. And then other bugs present in the environment attack the already vulnerable chimps, adding to their woes.
So most of these things that we're encountering are just normal environmental bacterias that are around and about in the world, and it's whether or not they take hold.
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
It's a complex diagnosis, but now that John knows exactly what bacteria are involved, he can figure out the right combination of antibiotics he needs to treat the problem.
You're not unduly worried, although we need to be cautious at this point with Ben's foot.
Yeah, you need to be cautious. He's got a lot of healing to achieve. Given that he's a chimp, given that it's looking better now than it had done, say, a few days ago, I think there's every chance it will heal up. But you're not out of the woods yet. No.
Yeah, okay.
Only time will tell if the antibiotics will work and prevent the infection from spreading to the rest of the group. On the other side of the park, it's time for the marmosets to be weighed.
Good boy.
The team want to make sure that they're all fit and healthy. Unlike the chaos in the orangutan nursery earlier in the day, Keeper Toby has everything under control.
What we're doing here with the boy marmosets to actually get them to sit on the scale is known as target training. Good boy, Marcel. Basically, we dip the target, which is temporarily a stick. We dip this into some food, which in this case is marmoset gum, which is one of their very favourites. It's sort of part of their natural diet. They eat a lot of gum and sap. And then we position them in the enclosure where we want them to be, in this case on the scales. And when they come to the target and touch it, they get clicked and they obviously get to lick the reward off.
Fluctuations in a marmoset's weight can have serious implications, so they're monitored more frequently than the orangutans.
These guys weigh only sort of 300-400 grams. It's very important that we know what sort of weight they're at, because losing 50 grams to us might not seem a lot, but to them it's quite a big portion of their body weight. Particularly in this bachelor group where we're doing introductions at the moment. Stress can obviously cause animals to lose weight, so it's equally important to make sure that all the boys in this group are staying at constant weights.
However, there's one animal that Toby hopes has lost weight. Mad Max has been on a diet since he arrived. Before moving to the park, his previous owners liked to feed him sugary treats, which didn't do much for his waistline.
Max weighs 330 grams. He was 380 the first week he arrived here, so he has lost some of that weight. He has been obviously a lot more active than he used to be. He's now got a big enclosure to move around in. He's been lots of play and wrestling and chasing with Marcel. On top of this, he now gets a sort of proper marmoset diet. There's no sweets or things involved, so he eats all their healthy food, fruit and vegetables with the odd treat. So he's doing well, and at 330 grams, he's only slightly heavier than Marcel, who is about the same age. He weighs 320 grams now, so Max seems to be doing very well with his diet.
So it's good news for Max, who's looking fit and healthy, and the rest of the troop appears to be in tip-top condition too. Back at the old capuchin house, a bunch of geriatric housemates are checking out their new outdoor enclosure. This is the first time that these ring-tailed lemurs and stump-tailed macaques have ever lived together, and it's clearly going to take some getting used to. Their first challenge: can they share feeding time without a fight? The keepers have provided them with some fruity ice lollies. They've been fixed at different heights to suit the feeding habits of both species and to make sure everyone gets something to eat. Lemurs like to feed in the trees, whilst macaques like to forage around at ground level. But macaque Gerald seems to have forgotten he's supposed to forage at ground level. He loves his food so much, he's willing to climb to get to it. The macaques are on a strict diet, so any snacks between meals are a real treat, and Gerald is certainly going to make the most of it. Sharing isn't the macaque's strong point. Grumpy Roland isn't about to let his new housemates anywhere near his lolly. Gerald's fingers are bent and arthritic from his days living in a lab, so he's finding it difficult to grasp onto the fruit. But eventually the lollies start to melt, and the lemurs are able to use their dexterous fingers to dislodge some of the best bits. So when the fruit begins to drop, it gives the other residents a chance to get their fair share. Both of the new residents of this house are clearly strong-willed and determined to get their own way. But together, they may just benefit from one another's company. Next time, Chimp Ben loses one of his infected toes, but the staff are relieved.
Yeah, the vet's advice was that really they couldn't do anything surgically for Ben because the whole of the foot area is an opened wound.
I'm bigger than you, OK?
Jeremy has a run-in with feisty female orangutan Linga. And it looks like another chimp has been struck down by the bacterial infection.
We want her to be able to breathe, obviously. And if it swells much further, that will be very difficult.
This is Monkey World in Dorset, the largest ape and monkey rescue centre on the planet. Today on Monkey Life, Chimp Ben loses one of his infected toes, but the staff are relieved.
He was very bothered by that toe that we were worried about, so now really that it's fallen off, the healing process can start.
I'm bigger than you, OK?
Jeremy has a run-in with feisty female orangutan Linga.
Stop it.
And another chimp seems to have been struck down by the spreading infection.
We want her to be able to breathe, obviously. And if it swells much further, that will be very difficult.
Monkey World is home to 3 groups of orangutans, including a creche for the youngsters. This morning, Animal Director Jeremy is checking up on a new relationship that's developed between Dinda and Linga.
Linga is very clingy to Dinda. And as you can see, they're like Siamese twins going round together. This has been going on for, well, quite some time now. In fact, it's got to this stage where Dinda is having had enough of it. And Dinda really is beginning to find Linga hanging around her neck a bit of a trial. So I'm sure in the near future that Dinda's going to try and break away a bit from Linga.
But for now, Dinda doesn't stand a chance of escaping, unless, that is, Jeremy's around to tempt Linga away. But it's not because he holds a special place in Linga's heart.
Stop it. Stop it. OK? Relax. Now stop it.
Linga has issues with Jeremy.
I'm bigger than you, OK? I should intimidate.
And she has him under attack.
Stop it. Look, you're not helping this, you're not. I'm bored with this now. Dr. Dolittle, eat your heart out.
Linga's constant aggression towards Jeremy means there's no love lost between the pair.
People get a bit funny with me when I say I don't like Linga. Why would I like an animal that's always trying to bite me? I mean, we could coexist, and I'm not going to be spiteful or cruel to her, but no, I don't like Linga.
But there is some comfort for Jeremy.
Apparently, it's anything of the male gender that she has a problem with, not just me. As she gets older, she's getting more aggressive with it. You know, although initially she would come and say hello and you could pick her up, but she'd always got this hard attitude about it all. As she's developed with that, she's come less and less wanting anything to do with male of the human species. And that's just an example of what you're seeing there. Amazing attitude that animal's got.
Well, Linga's made her feelings perfectly clear to Jeremy.
She's waving her fist at me in the corner over there now.
Jeremy's usually loved by the primates at the park, but his charm is lost on Linga.
Yeah, I've been beaten up in better places than this, so I'm going to leave now, so we'll meet again, possibly.
Later, Jeremy has to play the bad guy again when one of the female capuchins won't go to bed.
We're just trying to get our last individual in, Esther. She does the same thing every evening.
And Chimp Ben is at last on the mend, but it's not without loss.
Although it's a shame in terms of the place that we were at a few weeks ago, we're glad that it was just the one toe.
Across the park, the female capuchin's new male housemate, TJ, is settling in well with the ladies.
He seems to be loving it. He, you know, I suppose most guys out there would say, yeah, of course he is. But, you know, it's a big responsibility to be the one male in a group of, you know, more than 30 females.
But TJ is taking the challenge all in his stride, and he's loving life with the girls so much that he's taken to covering himself with his own special cologne to impress them.
His coat looks really sort of patchy and thin because he's been doing so much urine washing. And capuchin monkeys use urine washing as a way of sort of their identifying scent. His coat is really spiky and looks like he's been squirted down with a hose pipe, but he hasn't done. What's happening is he's got a very sticky coat covered in dried urine and sometimes, you know, wet urine that he's been splashing around to show off to all of his ladies, presumably.
Strange as this may seem, TJ's indulging in perfectly natural capuchin behaviour. In the wild, dominant male capuchins would do exactly the same, and the females find it very attractive. Unlike the ex-lab animals he shares his enclosure with, TJ behaves much more like a wild capuchin. He naturally forages for his food, and when the keepers put out his favourite treat, hard-boiled eggs, he knows just what he has to do to get his hands on them. They've been hidden in nests to encourage the capuchins to forage in the same way as they would in the wild, and that's exactly what TJ is doing. But the female capuchins have only been here for 6 months. And back in Chile, they used to be served their food on a tray. So searching for dinner is still a new experience for them, giving TJ the chance to grab a good stash before they work out what they're supposed to do. But capuchins are intelligent and curious, and it doesn't take the females long to catch on. And TJ better watch out. The females are becoming more like wild capuchins every day, which means they could soon get to TJ's precious hard-boiled eggs before he does. Inside Hananya's chimp house, there's sad news for Ben and his infected foot.
Unfortunately, Ben has lost one of the toes from the foot that was very infected. It was a toe that we were always worried about. It looked the most infected, and we came in this morning and it had dropped off overnight.
This nasty infection started after Ben received a small bite to his foot from alpha male Hananya during one of their introductions.
No problem. Yeah, no.
The team did all they could to treat Ben.
That didn't hurt, I didn't even touch her.
He was given antibiotics and painkillers, but Jeremy was always concerned that Ben could lose his toes.
This one is the coldest. That one isn't quite so cold, but...
The bite area may have been closest to that toe, and obviously the infection travelled down towards the toes, but also at one stage it was going up the ankle. But obviously we then controlled the infection when we found the right antibiotics, but unfortunately that toe came off worse. Obviously the blood supply was stopped and it just died and dropped off.
The wound was so infected that Ben's lucky to have lost just the one toe.
We were worried at one time if he would lose all the toes or even the foot, so really one toe, in retrospect, is not going to hinder him in the long term. He will still have his movement and be very agile when that foot totally heals. So although it's a shame, really in terms of the place that we were at a few weeks ago, we're glad that it was just the one toe.
Luckily, Ben's leaving the wound alone, and he doesn't seem too bothered by it.
In fact, I'm sure it's probably a relief because he was very bothered by that toe that we were worried about. So now really that it's fallen off, it sounds awful, but the healing process can start because obviously that was dead material. So now they can get used to walking around with a missing toe.
After a tough few months, it seems that Ben is on the road to recovery. At Monkey World, in Hananya's chimp house, Honey has a seriously swollen tongue. The team are concerned that she has the same bacterial infection as Ben and 3 of the other chimps. But Honey's infection could be more serious. It's on her tongue, and she's finding it difficult to eat, drink, and breathe. Honey needs immediate medical attention. So park vet Femke and local vet David are here to help her out.
Good girl, Honey.
Yeah.
Honey has to be anaesthetised, and as she's been taking part in injection training, primate care supervisor Cara is able to hand inject her. This is much less stressful than a blowpipe or dart gun.
She had it? Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well done.
It's a very worrying time. With Honey asleep, it's vital that Femke checks her airway to make sure it's clear. But when Femke touches Honey's tongue,
Jesus.
Honey wakes up.
She took her hand injection fine, and then we thought she was asleep. I poked her ear, I squeezed her fingernails to see if she reacted to pain, which she didn't. But then I wanted to look in her throat to see if the airway was clear, and I had to push the tongue down, and then she reacted and she was awake again. It must be very painful, I think.
Honey can't be moved until she's fully sedated. But as she's in pain, it's taking longer for her to fall asleep.
Maybe switch them off.
To help, it's lights out, and everyone is silent.
She's asleep again. Can someone hold the door open? And Dave, you want to help carry her, maybe?
With Honey fully sedated, the team needs to act fast. If her tongue continues to swell, she won't be able to breathe at all.
Look, I don't think that's possible.
Later,
can't really see anything.
No.
There's even more tension. Honey's tongue is so swollen, the team struggle to insert a vital breathing tube.
Do you want to try?
Around the park, some of the primates are playing with puzzle feeders. It's a great way to encourage them to work for their food. In Hananya's group, their feeder is in the form of a swinging platform. In the wild, chimpanzees have to forage for food. Their diet consists mainly of fruit, leaves and insects. And they can spend up to 3 hours fishing for termites. So at the park, it's good to make the chimps work for their treats. This feeder should also allow the whole troop to take part and work together to get the nuts and seeds out. Well, that's the idea anyway. Chimps being chimps, it doesn't take long before the taking part and working together bit turns into a squabble. And while this happens, Simon slips in and takes the best spot, using a stick to help him get to the treats. Unfortunately, his stick is more like a flimsy twig. And he's not getting much joy out of the feeder. Unlike wild chimps who can spend hours fishing for their food, Simon gives up quickly and tries another approach. Shake, rattle, and generally try to smash it. Simon may be tough, but the puzzle feeder is tougher. Having failed to get much in the way of food out, Simon decides it's a pretty good addition to the enclosure anyway. As another thing to play on with your mate. Back inside Hananya's house, Chimp Honey is asleep under anaesthetic, so vets Femke and David can check her extremely swollen tongue. Without medical attention, Honey could die.
You want her to be able to breathe, obviously. If it swells much further, that will be very difficult.
But before the medical examination can even begin, there's a problem.
Look at her tongue. Do you want to try?
Honey's tongue is so swollen that it's preventing the breathing tube going into her throat.
I can't really see anything from there. No. I would probably just have her on oxygen through her nose.
Yeah.
Now that David can properly examine her tongue, he can see that the severe swelling is caused by an infection.
I mean, there's enough sort of disturbance on the surface and underneath it. There's enough bacterial infection there to cause this alone.
Bacteria can invade the body through even a small wound, such as a splinter or a bee sting. But David suspects Honey has a small cut. And because this is how the other chimps in Hananya's group got their infection, it's likely Honey developed hers in the same way. And there's only one way to treat it.
We know that we can't really do much about it except for giving her intravenous antibiotics, which we are doing now. But she was on anti-inflammatory.
A wound on the tongue is difficult to treat. Creams can't be used because the tongue is constantly wet. This means it would be washed away by Honey's saliva. The 11-year-old needs an aggressive course of medication.
Mixing up some intravenous marbofloxacin, get it into a high dose into the bloodstream to hopefully get this sorted as soon as possible.
Because Honey's finding it difficult to drink, she's dehydrated, so she's given fluids through an intravenous drip.
The thing is, we want to get the marbofloxacin and this bag into her. If you hold the mask, I'll get a swab to take a swab.
The infection seems to have taken hold on the low-ranking chimps that were stressed out during the meetings between Ben and alpha male Hananya. The stress may have affected their immune system, making them more susceptible to infection. Honey is also low-ranking, so the same could have happened to her.
Yeah, and we've taken blood and swab samples from Honey to find out if we can find anything in the blood which is causing her to have an immune system that's not fighting this infection very well. So hopefully we'll find the cause. And this is okay, so actually we're finished then. Yeah. Take that drip out.
Yep, fine.
Good. Yeah.
Honey will need to be constantly monitored to make sure her breathing is okay and her tongue doesn't become even more swollen.
I mean, I would hope over the next 24 to 48 hours we'll certainly see a considerable improvement. You know, I wouldn't lose too much sleep about it not having gone down today, as long as it's not getting bigger. I think that's the main thing.
Everyone has to keep a very close eye on Honey. They have to check on her all the time to see if she's breathing all right, and also make sure she drinks enough, because it's really hard for her with this stuff.
Honey will stay on antibiotics for the next few days. Hopefully, she'll improve and be the last chimp to contract this nasty bacterial infection. At the far end of the park, the 68 female capuchins are enjoying their outdoor space so much that it's causing problems for the primate care staff at bedtime.
At the moment, obviously, they're still getting used to the new routines and even the fact that that's their home and this is where they can have access to in the daytime. You've got two coming. Who's that, Lilia and Terry? It is important that they are coming in for the right reason. In the evenings, we put in whole fruits and insect scatters and lots of reasons for them to want to come in.
But even with all these tasty treats, one of the gang still needs a little more persuasion.
We're just trying to get our last individual in, Esther. She does the same thing every evening. If it comes to it, then we'll have to call for assistance.
And this assistance comes in the shape of animal director Jeremy.
Just to let you know, I'm afraid Esther's still outside and going high.
Yeah, just by the orangs, I'll come down there.
Thank you.
Hannah and her team have worked hard to build a trusting relationship with all of the new capuchins. So as not to jeopardise their friendships, it's left to big, bad, scary Jeremy to usher her in.
It's important for capuchin keepers not to be this negative influence, so that's why we call people like Jeremy down to help us in these situations to get her in. And if you've seen any of that, you'll realise it is quite stressful for the animals, and it's certainly not something that we want to be doing long term. It's quite stressful for us as well to actually have to see these animals go through this. But obviously, because of their background and what they've been through, this is all new for them, and hopefully they'll be getting used to the routine by the end of the summer.
Jeremy's presence has done the trick, and with Esther safely indoors, she can join the others for supper. Then she can restore her energy, ready to give Jeremy the runaround tomorrow night. Next time, Gibbons, Adidas and Delumi head to the trees for the very first time.
Really pleased. You can't get anything better than a gibbon in a tree.
Heavyweight Hananya puts a punch bag through its paces. And there's a problem with Chimp Freddy. But will the team get to the bottom of it?
Freddy just doesn't look entirely happy. He just looks a little bit concerned all of the time.